Finally, we are seeing more Chinese manufacturers using Qualcomm chipsets and not always sticking with MediaTek. Here we have the Elephone U Pro. It's the top of the line version with 6 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage, powered by the Snapdragon 660. So that has a maximum turbo of 2.2 GHz, has Adreno 512 graphics, and overall it's not a bad chipset. Now this phone retails for about 400 US. Yes, that is very expensive for this brand of phone. This, in fact, is I feel their most expensive one, isn't it? It's quite an ask, and is it really up to the scratch of the price tag it has? Well, a little bit of a spoiler here. Yes, in terms of build quality, it is actually really quite good. A very premium phone, well put together. However, the software, as you'll see later on when I mentioned that, does have a few problems that need addressing ASAP. Trend now is the 18:9 or 2:1 aspect ratio screen. And it's a AMOLED panel, not Super AMOLED, but just normal AMOLED. And it has a maximum brightness of 600 lux, which is very bright. This is decent. I mean, sunlight legibility is good. And you will notice that it's got proper curved edges on here. So the screen wraps around a little bit on the edges. And when you look at it, you can see some color shifting, especially on those edges. And the screen itself color shifts out a little bit more than my Samsung Galaxy S7. But overall, good viewing angles, deep blacks, good colors, and a premium screen that's covered with Gorilla Glass 5. Now on the back here, we have this nice blue. This is one of the colors you can get for it, and I really do like it. It stands out, looks great. And you'll see we've got dual cameras on here. Now I tested these cameras out, and yes, they are both valid cameras. One of them is not fake or literally just doing nothing only for depth perception. No, it actually does do some things here. But the cameras, as I'll get onto later on in this review, they're very hit and miss. They're not really up to the price tag. Below that is the fingerprint reader. This is always on. And the location of it is fine. I find that I can easily get to that. And you can feel it because it is recessed in there a little bit. Got dual tone LED flashes in there as well. Now up the top we have a noise cancellation microphone that's used for voice calls, of course, and then in video as well. And a dual SIM tray there. So we'll take either 2 nano SIMs or a micro SD card and nano SIM. You can see those black little lines there. Those are the antenna strips there for your reception for 4G, which does support LTE band 20, which is great here for people in Europe. Now along the bottom, we've got these 2 little grills here. And one of them is the loudspeaker, the other one the microphone, and a Type-C port. Yes, the 3.5mm headphone port is not on this mobile, which is a little bit disappointing. So on the right hand side here we have some middle volume buttons and the power button. Now taking a look at what you get in the box, you get a Type-C to 3.5mm adapter, you've got your white USB to Type-C cable, and then your charger, which is an EU one, which is great. Of course, I live in Spain here, so that's the one I need. And that has a maximum output of 12 volts, 1.5 amps. In this box here, you get a clear case, which is a silicone one. That's not super high quality, but good to have it, of course. It fits perfectly. The SIM tool, and then a screen protector, which I highly recommend using because Gorilla Glass 5 scratches really easy, and I already have a little scratch on my phone, and I don't know how this happened. Now the weight of the phone is not bad at all. It comes in at 168 grams and 8.6 millimeters thick. U Pro has face unlocking, and that generally tends to work quite well as long as you're in good light. Now what doesn't work so well is the fingerprint reader. So the fingerprint reader here on the back is an always on fingerprint reader, so that's good. You don't need to wake the phone first. But just have a look at how slow this is. So I'll put my finger on here, and you can see that took about 2 seconds or so for then it to unlock. I'll just repeat that again. Okay, that was a little bit quicker then. And that took about 2 seconds again. So it's definitely not the fastest fingerprint reader you will come across. And I often find that sometimes it will not actually work, and I need to place my finger on there again for it to read it again. So not the best. So the phone is running Android 8.0, and it has a theme on here that I don't particularly like. The theme, they should have just left it as stock Android, but basically everything is stock Android on this phone. But this right here is in fact the icon for Chrome, and it doesn't even look like it. So most people wouldn't even realize that that's Chrome. You'd think that's just the built-in Android browser, but it isn't. Now performance is pretty good most of the time getting around in it, but there is a major problem, and that is that the phone will freeze and lock up, and it can sometimes lock up for up to about 10 seconds. The screen does not respond at all. Everything just jams up, freezes completely. I've tried to capture it on camera, but every time I got my camera out, after about 6 to sometimes 10 seconds, it will be perfectly fine again. But it is very irritating to use, and this often happens when you least want it to happen, of course. That seems to be the way things work there. Now you see that the system here has had some wireless updates have come through. There's an update system. Now none of those 2 to 3 updates that we've had already have addressed this problem. So that's one of the major bugs there. There is also another bug with the camera that I don't know if I can show you on camera, that what happens that when you're in camera mode, you take a few photos, you change some of the settings, and you adjust, say, for example, the picture size, and you change the quality of it, and you get out of this, and you want to go back and change over into the video mode. Okay, it's doing it now, but often I found that it would get stuck in camera mode, or it wouldn't allow you to switch between camera mode and video mode. That's just one bug there. But overall, the performance of the ROM, because of that 6 gigabytes of RAM that we have on here, is actually quite good. So you can do a lot of multitasking, swapping between things. That isn't too bad, but I have noticed a few stutters. It's definitely not the smoothest. And the other Snapdragon 660 device I tested, which was the Xiaomi Mi Note 3, that seemed to be a lot smoother in terms of performance, and just multitasking in general seems to be better optimized. The Android version of that one, they've just tweaked it a little bit better. Here it needs a lot of work, and I'm a little disappointed to say that really the last 2 weeks we've had no new updates here, which is quite bothersome. Now the good thing is the phone doesn't have any bloatware that I see, and well, not unnecessary bloatware. These are some of the updates that I was talking about. So they've had 2 of them come out that I know about. This is the free space you get. So you get about 111 or so gigabytes free, which is not bad at all, considering we still have micro SD card support. Here's the Antutu scores, so about 140,000, which is respectable for this chipset. And the internal storage, so it's not, unfortunately, UFS 2.1, which would be a lot faster than this. This is using eMMC 5.1 spec. And the speeds are decent. This is not going to slow up the phone. It just means it won't be as fast as ones with UFS storage support. Now, wireless, I ran into a few little problems here. I could never get the proper download speeds that I would expect here from the fiber line that I have, and doing some tests even at my home as well. I just could not get any faster than really about 50 megabits per second download speeds. And you can see that the upload is fine. Now in terms of 4G works out fine, really good speeds there, a good signal strength, no problems with that. GPS also works perfectly fine and well. The Snapdragon 660 has quite a good integrated the GPS chipset on that one, so no issues there. It was always between about 4 and 3 meters of accuracy walking around town. Now the battery life, so I did some tests of course running this. Just to mention the charge time, it does charge very quick with Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3. And around about 1 hour and 46 minutes it fully charged from 5%. So that's good. Good in my book. Very good. Not as fast as, of course, the OnePlus 5 or the 5T. So I managed to get screen on time of 6 hours and 50 minutes, you can see here, which is good for the battery, considering it's only 3,550 milliamp hours. It's not as big as those ones you see with 4,000. And that was okay. That was quite demanding use. So I believe that most people should definitely be able to get a full day of use out of this here. And you can see that was what I was actually gaming hit for 3 hours and 43 minutes. So very demanding use on my end there. A bit of Chrome there, some Asphalt Extreme. So you get the basic idea. So battery life, I feel for the size of phone and the capacity, it's holding up okay. It's just not the best. Moving on now to audio. We just have a single loudspeaker down here on the bottom. I feel, considering the price of this phone, around 400 US, very expensive, of course, for a Elephone, this type of Chinese mobile from this brand. They could have incorporated a loudspeaker also in that earpiece, would have been a little bit better. But overall, give you a sample now of the speaker. It's not too bad. It's got a bit of volume to it, but it's not a high quality speaker. It's definitely not the best sounding loudspeaker you'll hear from a mobile. So what about the headphone quality? Of course, it does not include a 3.5mm headphone port on there, which is a bit of a disappointment, so you have to use the adapter. But I did find the quality to be reasonably good. It's definitely clear and has a bit of volume to it. It's certainly not the loudest. Now, in terms of call quality, noise cancellation is there. It's certainly not the best either with that, so not as good as my Samsung Galaxy S7, the noise cancellation on this particular model, but I found it to be acceptable. The call quality the other end said I sounded alright to them as well, so that's good. So the phone does have an extra couple of features on here you don't normally get with these brands from China. So we have first wireless charging, which works well. It's a little bit slower, of course, than charging with the cable. It takes about an hour extra. So instead of charging in an hour and a half, it's going to take actually close to about 3 hours to fully charge it. I've also got NFC, which is great to have, but there's an issue with it, that it doesn't work with Android Pay. So what about gaming performance? Testing out games here like Rules of Survival, which is like a PUBG kind of style game, that it performs well. Other games I've tested out like World of Tanks and Shadow Fighter 3 all perform fine with a good frame rate. So you're not going to have any issues with gaming or with this Snapdragon 660 and its Adreno 512 GPU. So as I pointed out in the start of this video, we've got two rear-facing cameras on here, so we can take some nice bokeh blurred depth of field shots here, portrait mode, and when it gets the stitching right, which is hardly ever, it does take an amazing looking photo. So take a look at these flowers here, this actually looks quite good, but most of the time it will get this stitching completely wrong, and it just doesn't work well. So I don't see a lot of people using this because of that, because you're going to risk taking about 10 photos and maybe about 3 of them might look okay, maybe not. So in daylight, when you take a photo, most of the time that comes out okay. Now in terms of low light performance, you can see not wonderful. I feel that these cameras have an aperture of f2.2 or 2.0. It's not actually mentioned. Here's a look now at the front-facing camera. So because it's so windy, when the mobile's been blowing around in my hand, plenty of wind noise. But when there's no wind, the audio is okay. It's got a little bit of noise cancellation and some kind of whooshing effect that you sometimes hear on there. But overall, the quality I feel is fine. But is it up to the standard of the price tag? I feel not quite. It should be a little bit better. So it can shoot up to 4K video, and the quality you'll find is acceptable most of the time, but the problem is that it will sometimes drop frames, so it's not always a steady 30 frames per second that it should be, and this is definitely noticeable more when you use the camera to record 4K in low light conditions. So in low light it will drop frames like crazy, and sometimes it's only around 26 frames per second, even lower, that dips down quite a bit. But overall the quality is good. Now there is no optical image stabilization on the camera, and in 4K you don't have any digital. There is digital in 1080p. Now sample with that image stabilization on, so it's electronic image stabilization shot in 1080p, and it is absolutely disgusting, the frame rate. Look at this, it's like 5 frames per second, really bad, and even after 2 to 3 firmware updates, Elephone have not addressed this issue. It's as if they don't care or they're not even aware, but I don't know how they couldn't be aware of this massive problem with 1080p video. When it comes to camera performance, I can't help but feel that Elephone should have just gone with a single decent sensor with optical image stabilization instead of the cheaper dual 13 megapixel cameras. Okay guys, so end of the day, can I recommend the Elephone U Pro for $400 US that it's currently selling for? No, definitely not. Okay, the hardware is there. We've got a great screen. It's got deep blacks. It's an AMOLED panel covered with Gorilla Glass 5. It's curved even, and it is very premium. Yes, it looks like a Samsung Galaxy S8 or the S8 Plus. It's a definite copycat of that, a shameless clone of it, really. But there's big problems with the software on this. The fact that it freezes up, and it's when you need it the most. So I wanted to send an urgent WhatsApp, and what happened? The whole screen froze up on me for about 10 seconds and had me wanting to literally throw the phone through a window, out the window. But yeah, that should not be happening, and especially not for $400 US. There's no way I can recommend it in its current state. Now, if they can, of course, patch that, fix the camera performance, which is quite poor. It does not live up to the price tag at all. It's more like a $200 US mobile camera quality you get on this. It can take some good photos, it takes often bad photos, and it will leave a lot of people very frustrated, this phone. So I do recommend to go for something like OnePlus's 5T. My review is up here. That's a little bit more expensive, but well worth it. Or the Xiaomi Mi 6. My review of that one is up here, and that's actually cheaper from what this is selling at the moment. You get a Snapdragon 835 for that one. So thank you so much for watching this review, and I do hope to see you back in the channel soon with more up-and-coming mobile reviews and other reviews. Bye for now.